Hello everyone, my name is Brendan Snyder. Thank you so much for joining me and welcome to another episode of 5 Albums I Can't Live Without, 90s Rock Edition. So these are all perfect albums in my opinion. They're my favorite go-to albums. There's no bad songs on any of these, making them all albums that I can't live without. But before we dive into all of this, if you are new to my channel and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please click the button. Also leave a comment, hit like, all those things help support my channel. I would greatly appreciate it. And of course, as an added bonus, by subscribing, you'll be able to stay up to date on all that's going on in the world of music, just like this, with 5 albums I can't live without, 90s Rock Edition. So, as this is a rock list, we won't be talking about any alternative metal or grunge bands in this. They will all be getting their own list at a different time. So for this one, we are just focusing on rock. And kicking things off in no particular order, we are starting with Rush, Roll the Bones, from 1991, 14th studio album from them. And it was a return to commercial success for these guys. There was a renewed sense of energy from the band in the music itself. Of the 10 tracks that are here, none of them in particular are longer than 5 minutes, which for me at least made this album feel more like a hard rock album than a progressive rock album, which is really the genre that the band is from. But there's still enough complexities within the music that I think keeps it interesting, especially for fans like myself that are prog rock fans. And it features the hits like Dreamline, which that was the song that really got me into Rush. I had had a couple Rush albums on vinyl, just things I was checking out, but it wasn't my album yet. And this one here, when I heard it on the radio, I was really kind of blown away, and it just pulled me in and made me a lifelong Rush fan going forward. Other singles that were from this, Roll the Bones, Ghost of a Chance, really great as well. But for me, the album cuts on here, Bravado, Where's My Thing, which is an instrumental track, and Erotica, all of those really great top to bottom. It just kind of put the album over the top for me and made it an album that I can't live without. All right, next one goes to Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Into the Great Wide Open, also from 1991. 8th studio album from the band, but it was the 9th album for Tom Petty, as this one here is the follow-up to his massively successful solo album Full Moon Fever. And like that solo album, Jeff Lynne from ELO also produces this one here, who I've always thought was a great pairing with Tom Petty for his sound. I think that these two together just make some really classic music, much like the band's earlier material. And this one here featured the hits like Learning to Fly, Into the Great Wide Open, which had a very cool music video to it. If you're not familiar with it, do look this up. But it's got Johnny Depp starring in it, along with Faye Dunaway and even Matt LeBlanc from Friends. Then there was also the singles Out in the Cold and King's Highway, which is a personal favorite of mine. But the album is great from start to finish, and there's 2 other tracks on here that are my fave songs, Two Gunslingers and All or Nothing, which are just outstanding tracks. And so in all, though, just a fantastic album from start to finish, making this another album that I can't live without. All right, the next one goes to Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell 2, Back into Hell, from 1993, 6th studio album from Meatloaf. This one here featured the return of Jim Steinman as the writer and producer of the album, like the original Bat Out of Hell from 1977. And even though this one here was 16 years on from that debut album, this one too was also a monster hit and success for him as well. And for me, at least at the time, I had never heard music like this, mixing rock, metal, theater, operatic style music, pop, all into one thing here. The differences in all of that just kind of blew me away, and I immediately connected with me as something different, something I wanted to explore. And it featured the hits I'd Do Anything for Love, But I Won't Do That, which went to #1 in 28 different countries. Rock and Roll Dreams Come Through, and Objects in the Rearview Mirror May Appear Closer Than They Are. I was always kind of blown away too that they could come up with song titles that were this long and yet still have hits with them. But there was other songs on the album that I also enjoyed, of course. My favorite song on the whole album goes to Out of the Frying Pan and Into the Fire, as well as Good Girls Go to Heaven, Bad Girls Go Everywhere. But the whole 11 tracks that are within this album, any of those could have been my favorite songs, because it was just one of those kind of albums on here, making this an album that I can't live without. All right, the next one goes to the Rolling Stones, Bridges to Babylon from 1997. This one is their 21st studio British album, but 23rd studio album in America. So had to do with different releases that happened early on to the band that they got off a little like that, but 21st British, 23rd American release. So a little confusing there, but we'll keep it straight. So this one here brought in an eclectic mix of producers to work on the album. The Dust Brothers, who had worked with Beck and the Beastie Boys. Don Was did some production on here, who had worked with the B-52s and Iggy Pop. And then you had Rob Fraboni on here, who had worked with classic artists like Bob Dylan and Eric Clapton. And similarly, they brought in a lot of guest musicians on here as well. And then they also just did a wide array of different genres and things like rock, blues, soul, hip hop, and rap on here. All, in my opinion, creating a very interesting listening experience. And while the reviews on this were mixed and everything, I always felt this album was really good. It had a fresh feel to it. I think it still has a fresh feel even today on it. Features the hits Anybody Seen My Baby, which was a top 40 hit for them. Also Out of Control and Saint of Me. But I always like the songs Flip the Switch, Low Down, and Too Tight. And so all of those things together making this an album that I can't live without. All right, and the final album goes to ZZ Top, Recycler from 1990, 10th studio album from the band. And it was the culmination of a 3-album trilogy that they had started with and perfected from Eliminator in 1983, and then continued it on with Afterburner in 1985. And that album in particular, Afterburner, I always thought kind of had a dated sound to it, but Recycler, I think, found a way to give it a more classic feel. It featured the song Double Back, which was also in the movie Back to the Future 3, so it led off with kind of a bang having that song on here. And interesting, the band actually appeared in the movie Back to the Future 3, performing that track, albeit doing it sort of a folk country style version of it, of which I wish they had released a version of that. Would be kind of cool. The album did feature 4 big rock radio singles on it: Give It Up, My Head's in Mississippi, Burger Man, and Concrete and Steel. And so while the album only has 10 tracks, and we've just talked about 5 of them there, 2 other songs on here that I do really enjoy: Love Thing and Penthouse Eyes. Really great tracks, and this is just one of those albums that no matter what mood I'm in, it's always perfect, it always fits it, so of course it makes it an album that I can't live without. And there you go, 5 albums I can't live without, this one being the 90s rock edition. Do check the description for links to related videos. In particular, I'll leave a link to the 5 albums 80s rock edition and 5 albums 70s rock edition. So you can watch the trilogy of those together if you're interested. And certainly if you did enjoy the video, please consider sharing it out on social media. I would really appreciate that. It would help my channel too. And certainly I hope you have a good day. Take care, and I'll talk to you all soon. Bye-bye, everyone.